Hi. How are you?
Hi, good afternoon, good morning on your end.
Good afternoon, good morning on your end. Well, it's probably going to be like the evening, right? 4 p.m.
Yeah, it's almost evening, or I would say evening on my end. It's
Yes.
4:22 p.m.
Yes.
And I'm sure it's morning on your end.
Oh, yeah. It is, I think like, yeah, it's 8:22 on my end. Oh, let me mute
Hi,
my feedback.
good afternoon, good morning on your end.
Good afternoon, good morning on your
That's
end.
from YouTube.
Okay, I muted it. Sorry about that.
That's fine.
Awesome.
All right, so it's 8:22 on your end, I guess.
Yes. It's 8:22 and it's Sunday, and I'm happy to start the day with a good .NET talk. A good .NET book study session, I should say.
All right, that's fine. I'm excited also. So I'm just going to be following your lead on this one.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
this.
It was a learning experience, a lot of questions. I will say that I felt like I learned a lot of more information in these two chapters. It was just so much, and I'm just like, okay, like, I was like, ask my mentor, okay, what does this mean? Like we talked about in the group chat, like, what does this mean? The validate
anti-forgery.
token. Let me get my notes up real quick. One moment. Yeah, there was just a lot of information. I really enjoyed it. There were moments where I was frustrated, as we've kind of discussed, running into something, but like, that's just a part of the learning journey. And knowing what to do when you get frustrated with something, like, take a step away, take a walk. Sometimes it's best to sleep on it. Maybe
it just comes back to you over time. So while you're resting, you're trying to brainstorm about it, thinking about it, and then suddenly something just comes to you and you're like, oh yeah, I think this might solve it, and you're solving it already. Yeah. So it's not just about you feel like you have to solve it at that point in time. Sometimes you just have to let it go, just go do something else, probably take a nap or something, and then come back with fresh eyes, and you probably see the problem when you come back to it.
Fresh eyes is probably like the best eyes when it comes to
exactly
dealing with a situation. So yeah, okay. I guess maybe I should start with my notes. I don't know if you have notes. If not, super cool. Fine.
Yeah.
Let's see. So I guess we should say the chapters we went over and we had studied. So we studied chapters I think 6 and 7. Chapter 6 was called Add More Features. And chapter 7 was Security and Identity. So with chapter 6, Add More Features, we learned about, how to add, I think, like, checkboxes, right?
It was just first of all, learned about how to add our own to-do items.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's where the form came in. Then also we're given the kind of a little task to add a date to it, because previously we're at coding dates in the services. So we're supposed to add, bring up a form that's supposed to add items ourselves. Using the add to do service, and then the dates field also.
Where we can add it ourselves. Like in the user input, we type it up, hit the submit, it gets posted. that was the
Yeah,
one.
get populated in the
That was,
index. Yeah. So that was
yeah,
like what we did in the add more features and section. Yeah.
exactly.
So what else? Okay, so when posting, that's where we hit the, what would I call it now? The point where we needed to know what actually the validate anti-forgery token does.
Yeah, that one, I was like, okay, so how would this even happen? Like, what's the deal with this? And I even had like a whole conversation with my mentor about it. Um, so I want to, if it's okay, if I can review my notes
Sure,
of
sure.
what I've kind of learned about that situation. So it's called CSRF, which is cross-site request forgery. And this is, I guess, a common top 10 web issue. It's a
Okay.
common issue. It's basically when a different domain tries to hijack your request session, which could, it could pose a problem in terms of security. Like if you have sensitive information, you don't want that to happen. Um, I guess if an example would be like banking information. If somebody accessed your banking information and all of a sudden they're making transfers in your account, you're like,
Yeah.
how did that happen?
Or you're sending data through the wrong site. So I guess that's what cross-site actually means. You're sending data through the wrong site to that particular action. Yeah, so the validate anti-forgery token, what it does, it's just a level of protection
Protection. Yeah.
between the form being submitted, the data being submitted, and the action that is receiving the data. So um, all right, so from my understanding, this is what happens. When you're submitting the form, ASP action, which is an attribute that is used in the tag helper. So it's an
Yeah.
attribute or a tag helper. ASP action generates a token that is sent along with the form, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the validate um, action token, anti-forgery token, I think that's what it's called. So what it does, it confirms if that token that was generated was actually generated from that form. And
Mhm.
then if that test is passed, then it is allowed to enter into that action where whatever information is sent will be processed. But then if the token is not confirmed, if there is an issue with the token or a token wasn't sent at all, that's going to prevent it from actually going through. So that way it's
Yeah.
protecting your um, action from cross sites,
Yeah.
um, whatever it's called. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's it called again? CXRF,
CSRF. So cross-site
site
request
request
forgery.
forgery. Yeah. So it's
That's a long
protecting.
one.
Yeah. I think I need to put that down. CSRF.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna okay and this is where I get messed up with the name of it too. It's validate anti-forgery token. Okay.
Yeah,
Validate
so it's
anti-forgery.
validating the token.
Yeah. Okay, so and if it's okay if I'll talk about my understanding of it as well.
Sure.
So I like to think of the token as the ticket, and each request has a token, and the website itself will recognize its own token, right?
Mhm.
Um, so if a hacker website were to try to track or not even track, if a hacker website were to try to submit the same request, it would not work because it does not have the token, which is the ticket. If it was a regular user, like, okay, I'm going to submit this request, then it's fine because they're working with that domain. They're working with that website, and whatever requests that they have, they will be using the token. And another thing I learned was that the token is tied to the domain, and it's basically a cookie. So you can mark a cookie as secure, meaning it cannot be accessed by other websites. So basically, if it is coded that way, each website that requires a request of some type will have a token. So that way, other domains cannot try to access the request as well.
Yeah.
If I'm explaining it in the most simple way possible.
Yeah. It's quite clear. It's quite clear. So I think what we need to probably show this so that we'll not just all talk. So let's see where it's placed, how it's decorated, and all of that. I don't know if you want to do that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Would you like to share your screen?
Okay, let me do that then. Let me share my screen.
Let me check the group chat. I don't know if you have questions right now.
Okay. Can you give me access to sharing my screen, please?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, one
That's
second.
fine.
Let me see if I can do that. Okay, how about now? Let me know.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
Okay.
It's working now. So
Awesome.
I'm going to share my screen now. Awesome. All right. So this is, yeah, so this is, so I'm going to go to the view first, where we would have the form. So we're going to talk about this partial thing shortly, but this is the form. And this action, ASP action, is what helps in generating the token or the ticket, like you called it. So when it's submitting to this action, it generates the token. And then when we go to the controller, down here, we have to decorate it with this attribute, validate anti-forgery token. So this attribute now tells the action to check the token that is coming in, right? And then if it passes, it goes into the action. But if this wasn't there, just about anybody, yeah, can just send data into this action, and then whatever they want to do or accomplish, they'll be able to accomplish without any form of check. So it is really, really wise to decorate our post method with this. Yeah, so it just gives action another level of protection, which is really recommended.
Yeah. Thank you for
that makes a lot of sense, really, because we don't want someone coming from somewhere and then accessing our information by just creating a fake site and then just sending data into our site. We don't want that.
Exactly. Like, who's adding to my to-do list?
Exactly. Yeah, we don't want
that. They're adding stuff, they're deleting stuff.
What's happening?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really wise to do that. We want our app to be as secure as possible.
Of course, that makes total sense. And like, even with that whole validate anti-forgery token, that code right there, I just think it's so interesting how it's that code, and we're going to talk about it more with the security and identity chapter. But I think it's so cool how you can just add that one little small piece of code within the brackets.
Yeah, and then it does a whole lot of things for you.
Yeah, and then it completely just changes the game. Like, just that one small line.
Just that. Really, it's so, I don't know. It's so
it just transforms the code completely.
Yeah.
It's very, I feel like it's so cool. I
Now
was
that
like,
you now
okay,
that
this is
you
pretty
pointed
little.
it now that you pointed it out, it's really mind blowing. Like
Yeah.
1 minute you're exposed, and then the next minute by just typing 10 characters or 12 characters and you're like secure. What's happening here?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's almost
so
like it's easy to secure your app. I mean, I don't want to like get ahead of myself, but it almost seems like it's kind of just add that small code, and it's also easy to miss. I will say that.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
so yeah, that's an interesting learning experience.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there are other steps that you need to take to secure your apps some more, but then one step at a time.
one step at a time, right?
Yeah.
Um, what did you, and this is something I'm going to have to study on my own time,
Okay.
but what did you think of, I don't know if you remember, but the post request?
Mhm.
Um, like my mentor had advised that I should research different HTTP verbs. So there's
Okay.
like post request, there's a
There's
get request.
get, there's a put,
Um,
there's a patch.
was that um, terminology new to you? It was new to me, so I was just wondering, like did that
Well,
look familiar or did it look different?
what's familiar to me because as at the time when I started learning .NET, C Sharp, and I tried to build an API. I had to learn those HTTP verbs because you're definitely going to be using them when you build an API.
Right.
Because there are like different actions that you want whoever is consuming your API to take. So you probably want them to use the get request when they're getting information from your API. You want them to use the post request when they're trying to post something to your API. And then you want them to update information using the put or patch request and all of that. Yeah, so I'd already kind of used them before, so it wasn't really new to me.
Got it. Yeah, that's something I'll have to, and thankfully, like he shared some resources with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to research a little bit more about that in my own personal time. But I thought that was interesting. That was like my first time of really like seeing like posts and like how it's, it's all caps and stuff. And I'm like, okay, what is this? This is obviously like
Yeah.
its own thing. So,
Mhm.
so yeah, okay.
It's just telling the form that, oh, okay, all of this information right in here, I want you to pick it up and push it up there. Just stick it there.
Oh, I think we cut out.
I did.
Are you
Hello.
are you there, Gabriel?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here. Sorry about that. I don't
Oh,
know.
I think it's mine. I think
Oh,
it
really?
says that my internet connection is unstable.
Oh, really? Okay. Sorry about that. Okay,
That's
so
my bad.
yeah, it's fine. So I was saying that so the post request is decorated there on the form is just saying, oh, pick all of the information in here, and then there's something else. So can I share my screen again?
Of course, of course.
All right. So there's something else. So it's not just about decorating your okay, here we are. We're going to go into the partials. So where are we? Uh, I think I made a mistake here. Okay, yeah. So, all right. So it's not just about decorating with the method post. You also need to specify on the input fields that, oh, okay, this data is actually for this proper thing, the model. So this is our model, the to-do item. This is our
Mhm.
model that we're using to send information to the database. And right here in the model, um,
What did you
right
write?
here in the model, we have our ID is done,
Yeah.
title, due
Date
art,
time.
and user ID.
Yeah.
So ordinarily, the ID is going to be auto-generated. It's done. So when you're creating it, it's done. It's supposed to be false because you haven't really done whatever it's there. The
Yeah.
title is what we're getting from the user because the app doesn't know what what you want to do. So
Yeah.
the title is gotten from the user, and that's why it's decorated with this required attribute, which actually means that you have to provide this information. So the required attributes is just saying, oh, you have to provide this information, and then due at you also have to provide this information. So I could just decide to decorate this with required, and then user ID would be gotten. So this is much later when we're talking about security, but will be gotten from the app. So basically, my point is, at this point, we have to now find a way to connect the information from the user to this model or this property. That's a title property
Right.
and the due at property. And that we can do by just decorating our input fields with these attributes,
Yeah.
ASP4, and then
Yeah.
you're giving it what it's for. So then you're going to be calling it property. So like for title, you're going to be calling the property saying ASP for title, and then for dates, you're going to be saying that's the due at. You're going to be saying ASP for due at. That way, when you're submitting a form, it just attaches the information or the value gotten from this input field to the property, which would now be sent to the service, which is right here. Yeah. So I'm going to look for this item. So you can see that apart from the title and the due at, right here, we only have this other three information, which is not gotten from the view, right? So
Right.
the title and the due at is also being sent and then it's being stored. But then we're not seeing it right here because it's already
Yeah.
connected into this model. So it's right there, we can't see it, and then, but then it will be passed into
Oh.
our context and stored in the database. And all that is done,
Yeah.
all
Could
that
you
is done
explain?
by just decorating with ASP4, which I'm trying to bring up from here,
Okay.
by just decorating with this ASP4. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Yeah, here you are. ASP4. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out. So it's not just about method posts. You also have to
Right.
decorate with the ASP4 and then the name of the property, and that way now attaches the value gotten to the property and then sends to the controller.
Right. And then I have a quick question. Could you go back to the to-do controller?
Okay, the controller. Okay, to the controller. So we have
So
add
you
item.
said that,
Oh,
I think
okay.
that's,
That will
was
be
that?
the service. The
Oh,
service.
okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
You said that the title and the do at is connected where? Because I didn't even process that
Oh, okay.
during
So
my study.
okay. So the model that is sent, okay, so I'm going to move this a bit. Okay. So the model, this model, no, that's not the one I'm looking for. Let me say, item. Okay, yeah. So this model here is what is receiving the values from the form, right?
Right.
So when you click the submit button, what it does is it attaches the value from here into the property. So it just kind of says, okay, title equals, let's see, so if I'm like study, and then due at equals dates. So it just specifies, okay, what date
Yeah.
it is, right? And
Yes, we
then
could say like
puts
Stacy.
that in there. So it's like, okay,
Right.
So basically, it's just going to carry it that way and then take it up into the controller. And then right here in the controller, we're now sending it, right here. So we're passing the new item into our action, which is now sent into the service. Yeah, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
right here in the service, before any of all this in the service, right? What we have, if we just send that into the context, what we have would be something like new item dot title, and then it has the value from the view. So
Yeah.
the value is in there. But if I decide to change this to whatever I want it to be, I'm just typing gibberish now. So if I decide to change it to whatever I want whatever I want it to be, it's going to discard the value gotten from the view. But
Okay.
because what I want is the value gotten from the view, I'm going to just ignore new item dot title.
Right.
So it's still going to hold the value that is coming from the view and still
Okay.
assume that, oh, that is what is supposed to be in the title. Now, when we're coming from the view, it's only as due at and title. So I guess what that means is,
Right. Okay, that makes more sense. That makes more
yeah.
sense.
So
So
I guess what that
basically,
means is our ID is null at that point. Is done is null at that point also, and then
in that partial view,
yeah. So
that
because
makes a lot
nothing is sent from the view on ID, on is done, and on user ID. Nothing is sent up to the
right.
action.
Okay, let me
So
see.
that is why we have to now give them values right here in the service. The
Right.
ID has a value, now is done also has a value. So at this point, all of the properties do have a value, and then the value will be sent to the database using this context. I don't know if that
That no, that
explains
makes
or
a lot
that
of
helps.
sense. So basically the item, the partial view, basically, the add item partial view is only really taking the title and you said like the due date, like due at, it's only taking a little bit of the information, and that's going to be fed into the bigger model,
Mhm,
right? Okay,
mhm.
that makes a lot more sense. Thank you so much for explaining that to me, because like, like sometimes I get so caught up in just building that, at a certain point I have to look back and contextualize, like, okay, what exactly is this doing? What's the bigger picture? And yeah, so thank you so much for explaining that to me. That
That's
was really
fine.
helpful. Let me see if I have anything else. So yeah, going back to I think it was the partial view. Um, one thing I did learn about was model binding, which is kind of basically what you were explaining.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. That's just it. That's the
yeah,
word.
and it reminds me of data binding. And I learned data binding during when I was building my website with Blazor, and like you doing the user input and you wanting to you needing to bind whatever that user had submitted. You needed to bind it to a certain type of data type, basically. So that's what I saw as familiar, and it kind of helped understand model binding a little bit better. Yeah, I think the model binding part comes when, if you could share your, or maybe I should share my screen. Um,
Okay.
1 second. I should make my screen a little smaller. My light, I still have my light here. Okay. share my screen right now. Yeah, it's like something that's just really small. Basically, this part where you kind of tag the model you want this information to be fed into, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's basically the act of model binding. You are binding information to a model that you want, like if you want the information to be fed into the model, so you're going to tag the model that you want to use. That's how I understood it. So yeah, I that's one thing that I thought was interesting, and I thought it was pretty familiar. I wasn't too familiar with model binding, but I was familiar with data binding, and I figured it's just the same, basically the same thing. Binding information to be fed into something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, that I just wanted to show that. Let me pull up my notes. And another thing, the way that my mentor helped me understand was that model binding is basically like a JSON converter. So I don't know if you've used a JSON converter, but you can take raw information like JSON and put it in the converter, and then it'll all of a sudden turn into classes.
Yeah.
The classes. So that's basically what a model binding is, taking that raw data and converting it into model classes.
Yeah, binding it into the classes and then using the classes for whatever you want to do with it.
Yeah, I hope that makes sense. Let's see. Okay, so what did you think of the security and identity chapter? If it's okay to move on.
It's okay to move on. Okay, before we move on, I think there's one more thing that we didn't cover. So
okay.
I was just looking at the book, and the checkboxes to specify that we've completed a to-do. Come and give me a second. Yeah, so
I'm just responding
when using the form, responding to the what?
The YouTube chat. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So, all right. So, yeah, I'm trying to get my thoughts back. Okay.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
I just wanted to say thanks for tuning in.
Yeah.
Ignore me.
All right. Okay, so after adding a to-do item to the database, at the end of the day, you probably would have completed that and you want to take it off the view. So how the book implemented that was using a checkbox. So when you click on the checkbox, it just deletes the to-do item. It didn't delete it, but it just kind of removed it from the view using by changing the is done from false to true. And a couple of things went on behind the scenes for that one, which was really interesting because for one thing, I saw how to submit a form using JavaScript. So instead of just clicking the submit button, just when you click on it, just JavaScript just runs and then submits the form, and then everything just happens like in a second, and then just like, oh, that item that was there was no longer there. It's still in the database, but it's not there, which for me, I think is not really good practice because I believe over time, okay, I don't know. What do I know? Well, I wouldn't say it's not good practice, but I think what I want to say is I think I wouldn't do that. I think I would delete it because over time it just keeps populating the database with a lot of to-do items that are no longer in use. We don't need them, and they're just there in the database but not being shown to the user. So probably if someone were to be using the app for a couple of years. So that means if they did put a minimum of 10 to do items every day, so that means at the end of 2 years, they should be having close to 7,000 to do items in the DB.
Okay.
And then
That's a
probably
lot
they would be
of
seeing just
information.
2 or 3. Oh, you said?
That's a lot of information to hold in a database, especially if you're going to be
Yeah,
deleting it from your view and out of sight, out of mind. So
yeah.
I think
So
I understand what you mean. Like,
yeah. So
it,
continue, please.
I was just going to say, like, it's just sometimes it's not enough to delete it from the view, but it should probably be deleted from the database as well if you're completely done with it.
Yeah, so I know there are instances where you probably want to keep information. You don't want it to be on the view, but you don't want to delete it in total. But I know there are instances like that. But something like this, I think you probably want to delete it and just forget about it. Since just
Right.
it's just a to-do item or a to-do information or whatever. It's not really that
That's a
important, I
great
guess.
point. That's a great point,
Yeah.
though. And it can kind of like slow down your app, right? If you just have all this useless information sitting in the database.
Yeah,
I
because over
think
time, the time it takes to process the filters, you're
the
checking
filter.
so I'm just going to share my screen so that we see all of
Okay.
this. Yeah. Okay. All right. So this is where we're getting the information from the DB. Yeah. So one of the filter is where X is done equals false. So now you probably have like 7,000 items in the DB, and then 6,998 of them are false and just 2 are true. So that means it has to filter through 6,998 false to get, or 7,000 items to get 2 true inside of 6,998 false, which will probably take a while. So yeah, I think there are ways to make it better, but for something like this, I would prefer you delete it, I guess. I don't
Right.
know.
No,
Yeah,
I
so
totally see your point.
this is where it was implemented. So you're getting the item that was clicked on, and then you're changing item is done equals true. So you're like, okay, it's done. Still stay in the GB, it's done. Just be there, but don't show up to the user anymore. So
Right.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Well, it's fine. It just shows you the different ways where you can probably take things off the view and yeah, and stick have it in your DB. I think if you probably wanted to delete this, we just do context dot let's see delete. Nope. I'm trying to remember. Okay, the items. Yeah, I'm sorry. I need to get the items first. That's
You just
I
reminded
think
me of something else.
it's
Oh wait.
it's supposed, is it delete or remove? It's one of them. I can't really remember. I think it's remove. Then you pass in the item, something like this. I think this is how it's done to remove the item from the DB. Yeah, so this way, if we're using this way, it's going to be removed from the DB totally. And then you don't have to do all of this check where you're checking if it's false. All you need to do is just bring up all of the items where the user ID is the user of the app at that point in time. So, but then I'm just going to leave it the way it is. Yeah, this is the way it is. So this is fine. Yeah, you said I reminded you of something. What would that be?
Yeah, the where. Um, could you
Okay.
go back to the page you were on?
Oh, okay, let me do that.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. In the services, that'll be yeah. Okay, yeah.
Okay, so under public async, task to do item, get incomplete items.
Yep.
So you see the dot where?
Mhm.
Okay, so I have a hard time understanding the X. I think that it's called a lambda. X
Yeah,
is dot
that
dot X
one.
dot is done. I have a hard time understanding what that means. I Googled it and I'm like, I still don't get it.
Okay,
Like, how does
I
that read? Like, how do you interpret that?
okay, so let's see how I can best interpret that. Give me a second. Okay, so you probably have used for each before. Have you?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I know, and I know there's like it's a part of link. The dot where I learned about that towards the beginning of the book. I just don't know what X. I think that's
Okay,
X
so
lambda X
okay,
is dot
yeah.
is yeah.
Okay, so like for each, when you like trying to look through an array or something, you're given an instance. So I am trying to be as plain as possible because
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I know the terms or the names used for all of this. So I'm just going to be using plain words. So you're trying to give a name for every instance of that loop. So at this point, you can say item and do whatever you want to do with item. So each time it goes through collection, it, that particular instance you're on will be called item. So when you do what you want to do with it, you come back again, that particular instance you're on will be called item. So if you probably want to do, let's see, okay, this wouldn't work because there's no array here. So let's see if there's an array. Okay, there's no array here. So let me just go back to using what we have. So
Okay.
right now we're saying, okay, but where X, so X right now would be like the name. So like item. So I could change X to item, and then all I need to do is change this to item.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's interchangeable. So whatever you're calling here is what you're using in here, right? So I'm just
Yeah.
giving it the name X, and I'm saying I'm now using X. So that instance, the instance we're on inside the items table is what we're calling X. And then inside of that instance, you can use X to do a couple of things. And X right now is our to-do item. If I go into our to-do item model, there are 5 different properties there. ID is done, title, due
Right.
out, and user ID. And then you can see that I'm using 2 of them, is done and user ID. I could also check, I could say again, if x dot title, now using the title and then doing a check that if I have the title, I want to check for the exact same title. I could now say if x dot title is equal to study. So now it has 3 filters or 3 conditions for what it's going to present to me, right? So it's going to check, first of all, if that item is false, if it's done of that item is false, then it's going to check if the ID is the user ID gotten from the view or from the app. It's also going to check if the title is study. I can do more check. All I just need to do is and again and then say x dot. What other check haven't I done? I've done for user ID due at.
Yeah.
I say due at, and I can also do like okay if due at is greater than whatever. So it's not
Yeah.
just equal to. I could say if due at is a date. Can I do a greater than check on the date? I'm not so sure about that. But if probably there's an integer, and then let's say this we're checking for values in an e-commerce store, the price of an e-commerce product, and I want to bring out, when you're doing filters, you're like saying, okay, filter, I want products from the range of $5,000 to $10,000. So I could do a check of if I have that property in my whatever, in my, sorry, not whatever. If I have that property in my model, I could say x dot price. So right now, price is not in our model, but I could say x dot price is greater than 5,000 and X dot price is
Okay, I think I see it now. I think I see it.
lesser than 10,000.
Yeah, so you're saying, okay, it kind of took me a while, but I think I see it. So,
Okay.
like going back to the original, so X is item. So
Yeah.
X dot item, or sorry, item, like a specific to do
Yeah,
item.
if you're changing, yeah.
If is done, so that we want to see if,
Which I
so if
think,
it's done, if
sorry
it's
for cutting you
not
short.
done. Oh,
Sorry for cutting you short, which I think is even better, changing all of this X to item. I think that would even
it makes more
make more
sense
sense.
in my
Yeah.
head.
Yeah, so let me just
I was
do
like,
that.
this looks like algebra.
Okay, so let me just do that. Now I think it's clearer.
It makes a lot more sense. Okay. I mean, at least that I know what X is now.
Mhm.
So basically where the item is not done yet, and the item it has a specific user ID,
Mhm.
and that's what we're pulling from.
Yeah, so you're gonna pull that, then it goes again through the loop and brings the next one. If it performs that operation and then the result is true, it's gonna bring it. But if the result is false, then it's just gonna omit it. And then everything is going to be populated into this array, which is going to be returned to the controller.
And each item in the to-do list has a
Yeah.
user ID
Yeah.
under our security and identity chapter.
Yeah.
And, that's kind of like where we're going. Yeah, where we're talking about that part. So yeah, did you have any notes or concerns about that part? If it's okay, I will say like what I have learned so far is that anytime you add or change an action to your controller, you need to add this action or change to the interface definition as well as its implementation. And I don't know if you want to get into any of that. I have like a whole much longer explanation, but I feel like I'm talking a lot. Yeah, so I'll just go on with what I have. So
Okay.
basically, when I documented the process, paying attention to the patterns, basically I added a new action piece to the controller. Because of this, the interface and its implementation needed to be updated to include the parameter of this action. And so the entity model to do item class then needs to be updated with a new property so that each item can remember the user that owns it. And this is kind of like where we get into what it is that we're doing, which is adding a login so that the database, if there were multiple users who wanted to use the to-do list, they could log in, add their to-do list items, and not worry about other users getting their to-do items, and that you can keep it separate because each item is tied to a user ID login credentials, basically. So I don't know if I missed anything, if you would like to add anything, if you had any questions or concerns.
No questions.
I said a lot.
And, yeah. So I'm trying to bring it up from somewhere. So at the beginning, you mentioned that when you make changes to your controller, you have to affect the interface and then the services. That is very correct because they are all like working together. The service layer
Right.
and then the controller. Yeah, so they're all working together. So if you make a change in the controller, and most of the time you want the service to implement that change and then give it back the result. And then from the way it is works, the controller is speaking to the service through the interface. So you have to put in the method definition in the interface and then the implementation in the service. So that is very correct. Yeah.
Right.
So and about let's see, the other part where you're talking about different persons not saying their to-do items, because when we started, if we push that live, if I put on my app study, and then you go on the app, you're going to be seeing study on your end, and you're like, wait, I didn't put this here.
Yeah,
Now,
or I already studied and then I click
yeah,
once and I
yeah.
check it
So
off, and then
yeah.
you're like, oh wait, I haven't studied in 3 weeks. What happened?
So
What's going
yeah,
on,
so
guys?
we have to figure out a way to make sure that I see what I have put in the database, and then you see what you put in the database, and um,
And it
it's not
doesn't intermingle. It's
clashing.
not.
Yeah,
There's no
and
confusion.
that's where security comes in.
Right. And the fact that it can be filtered out in the database based on what user ID, almost like
Mhm.
it kind of reminds me of the token, but it's like a different
Yeah,
type of ticket.
yeah.
Each item in the database is tied to a specific user ID. That way, multiple users, like I said before, can access the app without having to worry about crossing information. So yeah, it's like
Mhm.
it's security. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's
Um,
yeah.
yeah. So,
It's like I guess okay.
oh, sorry. I was just gonna say that. Yeah, going back, every time you add if you update your action, depending on the type of action it is, if you update it or add to it in the controller, it will need to go back and update it in the interface and its implementation. To me, it almost seems kind of like working backwards. Like when you realize, oh, I need to do this, but let me cover my tracks, update it here and here, the interface and the implementation. So because we are introducing a new data type to our app, which is the user ID, we also need to add it to the entity model, which is the to-do item class. And correct me if I'm misinterpreting it. So the model needs to be updated with a new property so that each item can remember the user that owns it. Because the entity model has been updated and the database context references it, the database also needs to be migrated. And that's when I ran into my issue that we were discussing at the beginning of the session.
Yeah.
I don't know if you wanted to touch on any of what I just said. Basically, since we're working with the user ID now, we're working with
Yeah.
user ID information, we need to update the model because each to-do item is tied to a specific user ID.
Okay. So this is what I would suggest. Since we're having a bit of an issue with that particular one, we're just going to touch on the surface. We're already running out of time. We're going to touch on the surface, and then we'll come back in 2 weeks' time to now discuss in depth on it. If
Right.
that's fine with you, right?
Right.
So
Yeah, it's
now,
fine.
okay. So now touching on the surface, I want to bring in two words that's like in sync with what's it called now? Security and identity. And those two words are authentication and authorization. You probably
Ooh.
did see them, right? Yeah, so authentication and authorization. So it seems like they do the same thing, but they actually do two different things. And it's very, and then when we're talking about user ID, that's when that comes to my mind, because
Yeah.
when you're going somewhere, you probably need to get into a place that is like um and there's like restrictions. So you probably have to be 18 years and above to enter that location. Probably going into a bar, and they're like, "Oh, you have to be 18 years and above before you enter into this place." And they're like, "What's your ID? Or what's your ID?" And then you show them your ID, and you're like, "Okay, you're 18 years and above, can come in." So it's more or less like the same thing that's happening here. So authentication is answering the question, um, are you allowed to be here? Right?
Okay. Yeah.
So it's like you giving your ID to say, oh, I can be in here, right?
Yeah.
Authorization is like saying, okay, you're allowed to be here, but what are you allowed to see?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that's
wow.
what authorization does. So, okay, you're allowed to be here, but what are you allowed to see? So you're like, oh, you're allowed to be in this bar, but where are you allowed to sit? I guess your money will
What a
tell you
great
where you're allowed to
point.
sit.
That is a
What?
fantastic point.
Yeah.
And I feel like, because I haven't gotten to that point, that part yet in the book after I ran into my issue.
Okay.
But that will help, that helps explain it to me, because I was like, okay, it does similar things, but like, what's the difference? And I made a point that it does do, they do separate different things. So that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense.
So that's where the user ID comes in. The user ID helps to identify you, and most times it also identifies what you're allowed to be in the app. So you could be like an admin, or you could just be a normal user. Yeah. So if you provide your user ID, it's going to check: are you an admin? Are you a super admin? Are you just a user? What are you? Okay. Oh, this is what you are. Okay, good. This is what you can do with your authorization status, something like that.
Yeah. So the authentication, I don't know if I said that right.
Yeah, authentication.
Authentication, thank you. That's asking the question, are you in or are you out? Can you be in or can you be out? Authorization is, okay, you're in, but what's your status? Like, what's your status in this club? And depending on your status is the type of view you get to see, like you said, like, or are you an employer or are you an employee? And I'm thinking like in terms of school, like, are you a student or are you the teacher? The teacher will probably get to see like the answer key. The students only get to see like the questions. Okay, that's a good point. Thank you so much for saying that. It's very interesting.
So I guess what we need to do right now is just go back to our issue and then come back to explain more.
Yeah. Did you want to explain a little bit about the issue we're having?
Okay. So yeah.
I don't know if it's a migration thing. Like, the migration
for
isn't
me,
for me.
For me, the migration is working quite well. Everything seems to be working fine. And then when I try to Google on it, I get solutions that are like already in place. So I am the issue. Okay, I think I'm just going to run. Let me work on. Let me share my screen and then run the app. So I will see right here.
I was able to get to page 85.
Okay.
I don't know if that's the same as you.
I've gotten quite okay, I'm still in the security and identity, but I can't remember where exactly it's. I just wanted to test it out with like 2 users to see if it's actually filtering out for different users. I tried doing that and I don't know. So I'm going to just do like what's it called now? Another migration, and I'm gonna just call it updates migration. Let's see. I don't know if I've used that before, update migration. So I'm just going to do this, and it's not going to give me any error from what I've been seeing. It's just going to act as though everything is working perfectly fine. And yeah, so it's starting the build. So when all of this happens, I'm going to run the app, and then let's see if it's if probably the live will make it work.
I'm looking at it. I think you might have forgotten an R in the first migration.
Oh yeah, my bad. I didn't even notice that. Yeah. So while that is happening, I'm just going to go back in here. So this is our application user. It's inheriting from identity user. And so all of the tables or properties is supposed to pass into application user. And I did check in my migration. So that's the, let's see. Yep. So I checked in my migrations to be sure that I did create it. And yeah, I can see migrations builder creates table ASP.NET users. It did create this in the migrations, identity, username, and all of this. So all of this were created in the migrations. What's it called now? Migrations file. So that means it's supposed to have been created in the DB also.
Yeah.
But I don't know why it's not working. So I'm just going to update the database .NET EF database update.
So you're saying that you're having an issue with your migrations?
It's not really the migration. It's probably the migration. So it's probably something I'm missing that I can't really see. So that's why I just kind of left it for a.
For some reason, like I'm getting like a weird error. But it also said that it's like it's there. So it might just be, like since it's 2021, like things, software gets updated. It could be like an outdated thing. I'm not sure. But I know like if we Google around enough, we should, find a solution to it. Oh wait, are you there still? I'll send a chat. Uh-oh. I think we lost him, guys.
Sorry, I don't know what happened.
I'm not sure if that was like my Wi-Fi or yours. Can Wi-Fi? Uh-oh.
Yeah, it seems to be mine. It
Okay.
seems to be mine, my bad. This has been working. I don't know why it's not working right now. So I'm just, it's probably because I have it already. .NET EF database updates.
I think it's getting choppy.
Alter column operation. I think it's big .NET run. I'm just going to run DB sets of identity user.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Hopefully it gets better. Are you there? I can hear you just a little bit. Yeah, I think the Wi-Fi is choppy now.
Are you there?
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Elahn?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you. I think we should wrap up. Something is wrong with my internet.
I'm
And
sorry to hear that. I was like, I was so interested in what you were gonna say. So, oh, that
yeah,
sucks.
so we'll probably fix something up
Sorry,
for
guys.
later. Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with it. So let's just wrap up. We'll continue from there next week.
Okay. Thank you so much for your
2 weeks time.
explanation. Yes, yes. Thank you so much for your time and for your explanations and your clarifications. And thank you all for tuning in. This was a really great session. We learned a lot. And I feel like we're just gonna
Yeah,
keep
thank you
on
very much
learning.
for 3 sessions in, and
Yes,
let's just exactly. Thank you very
yes.
much, Elahn. Have a wonderful day ahead. Since you're still in the morning, have a wonderful day ahead. We're just wrapping up the day over here. So
Thank you so much. You have a wonderful evening, and I hope you have a great week and a great Monday, especially those Mondays. Yeah,
yeah,
and I will.
another busy week.
Yeah. Oh man.
All right,
And yeah,
bye.
bye.